Welcome to another edition of MIRANET Talks. I'm Trevor Isaac, Vice-Chair of MIRANET, and today we have Christy Upshall, CEO of Our Place Peel, and Cory O'Handley, Director of Housing and Services and Innovation for SHIP.
That's right.
How are you guys doing today?
Good, thanks.
Yeah?
How are you?
Oh, not bad, not bad. Thanks for joining us today. Do you know anything about MIRANET?
A bit,
A little
not
bit.
too much.
Okay, so in a nutshell, what we are is we're a residents association network. Okay, so throughout Mississauga, there are various ratepayer groups that organize within their communities, and they tackle issues that are going on within their specific communities. But it's not just tackling stuff; it's also community awareness in terms of events that are going on in that particular community. But again, a lot of the times, we have a lot of holes within Mississauga, and when I say holes, I'm talking about gaps where we don't have any ratepayer networks, okay, or ratepayer associations. And we think it's really important because it helps keep the communities more involved and in terms of what's going on within their communities. A lot of times, networks don't really, or associations don't really pop up until there's a crisis or an issue that takes place within that community, okay? So MIRANET being, we kind of look at it like MIRANET being the bike and the residents associations being the spokes. And what they say is more power in one voice, right? So we can tackle issues across the city that are, because again, there's issues that are specific to particular communities, but at the same time, a lot of them overlap.
Right.
Okay, so there's more power in one voice, and if it's a unified voice, we get things accomplished. I mean, we hope to get things more accomplished, right? So that's kind of what MIRANET is in a nutshell. Christy, what about you? What do you guys do?
So I'm the CEO of an organization called Our Place Peel. We've been around for 40 years. We provide shelter and outreach programs to homeless youth. We have 3 shelters within the region of Peel and a 17-bed transitional program. And we also have our outreach team that works with youth in the community who are at risk of losing their house to make sure that they stay housed and not come back into the shelter system.
Okay, I didn't realize that you actually did that. You also help people remain in their homes.
Yeah.
Seniors, I guess, would be affected, that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, we're mostly, our youth, we're a youth-serving organization, so
Youth,
we're 16 to 24.
Okay.
So a lot of our youth who come through the shelter system, and we can get them housed, they'll be out in the community, and the staff will work with them to landlord mediation, life skills development, really whatever their goals are to ensure that they can continue to stay living independently.
Right, that's fantastic. Cory, you're up.
SHIP. I refer to us as a unicorn. The reason I say that is because there's no other organizations like SHIP. So our mandate is mental health and addiction and supportive housing. Right. Our current headcount is over 550 people that work in our organization. We have an operating budget of $72 million. Our assets are over $150 million. We own and operate buildings. And we partner with landlords too for housing. So for example, we'll have partnerships with private landlords that we provide head leases and rent for those units. And we house about 1,100 folks in those buildings. So overall, our service is probably around 15 housed. And we probably serve about 4,000 people annually. Genetic makeup of our organization is everything from operating transitional youth shelters to family shelters to crisis support centers. We have ACT teams in our portfolio, community mental health counselors, tenant relations, hoarding specialists, trauma-informed nurses. So we do a lot.
So you've got a whole team behind you. That,
Yeah.
This ACT, what exactly is that?
Serve community treatment. So basically, hospitals wall, so psychiatrists, nurses, social workers, OTs that work from the community and work with folks in the community that live in the community. So each team, we have 2 teams. Each team has about 80 clients each. So we support those all the way up from Dufferin County all to South Mississauga.
Okay, all right. So it's not just Peel based. It's
no, we have a big reach. We're also doing work in
right.
Kitchener-Waterloo right now. So we're doing shelters out there. In Dufferin County, we own the property. They renovated a motel into 27 permanent units. And we have a mobile counseling team up there that works out of that location as well. Right. We do social purpose enterprise for clients. So we have run businesses for clients. We do a lot.
Now, SHIP, does it have anything to do with SHIP the Builders?
No.
No, it's not
No,
related.
it's interesting because people do talk about that.
Right.
So, again, it used to stand for supportive housing in Peel,
Right.
but because we have a bigger reach now,
And you're not just Peel.
that's right. The thought was supportive housing in the province, which people are like, what province? But it's Ontario.
Okay, all right. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So, where do you see your biggest challenge in relation to housing?
So for us, it's the lack of housing and the lack of affordable housing. So one of the things, we have 127 beds throughout the region, and we're full.
Nearly not enough.
We're full, and so we're turning people away, and then in order for low-income earners, which is our youth, to find an affordable house to rent, is difficult.
Right.
And then you have the stigma of not wanting to rent to a youth who might not be as the landlord will have struggles with renting to youth just because
they're not established,
not
because of the
established,
stigma,
yeah.
I guess, maybe with alcohol and drugs and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
And the other places that we also are is supportive housing. So we're looking at there's multiple different types of housing, but then we're looking at the supportive housing. There is no supportive housing for youth in the region. There's very little supportive housing for anyone within the region. But specifically, the approach is, housing first. Get them out of the shelter system into a house, and then provide the supports around them that they need, which could be mental health supports, addiction supports, if they're interested in going back to school or employment. So it's just getting them housed is the most important thing to stabilize them as much as possible. So that is where you're seeing a lot of the rent is very high for the
rent is extremely high, and I mean, there's been a downtick recently in terms of rental rates, but it's still nowhere near affordable for most people, right? It's a struggle. It's a struggle for youth. It's a struggle for basically every aspect of the population, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And Cory, what do you think is?
Exactly what Christy's saying. Right now, nationally, there's over 300,000 folks that are unhoused. Provincially, there's 82,000. Then that increase has actually jumped over the last 8 years to 25%. That's increased by 25%. The last 2 years, 12%. So we're dealing with a tsunami of folks that are unhoused. Lack of stock, NIMBYism, affordability. And we talk about deep affordability. And so what that means, no one should be paying more than 30% for their shelter.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if you're looking at a supportive housing program that actually has subsidies that apply to it, it evens out a little bit, because we get to the market rate of $2,200 or $23, whatever the market's asking, and that person's still paying their shelter allowance to that unit. However, if an organization doesn't have a subsidy, what do? Because again, if, for example, if you have, right now I think the average is $90,000 someone needs to make so they can be within that 30% threshold to actually have affordability.
Right.
We know our populations don't have that.
No.
So if someone's coming in, if they're making $17,000, that equals out to $425 a month, which they should be paying. But again, if that organization doesn't have that subsidy to top it up, how do you then pay for operational costs, your capital reserve, all the other great things that come in from being a housing provider?
Right.
So we're dealing with that. We're dealing with stigma. We're dealing with our population is more complex now. Vacancy rates are low. We know that the 1-2% within Mississauga and in the region of Peel. And affordability, just as we talked about, even though they did come down, I think 4%, they're still significant.
They're still significant.
Yeah, where people you need to make 90,000 coming in to afford that.
And that 30% mark is very difficult, because of what I do as well. Our ratios are 39%. That's in terms of a mortgage, right? But 30% would be more so for the rental side of things. And I mean, in terms of funding, are you guys just raising your own money? Are you getting funding from the municipality? Are you getting it from the province? How are you guys handling your operational costs?
Well, for us, we get funding through Ontario Health and Ministry of Health, and also through the region as well around subsidies. So what we've had to do is being very creative with our subsidies, especially with the province. So we have to stack them. For example, if we say, we're getting $200,000 in subsidies, at one time that was about, 15 units. Not anymore, that's about 7 units.
Right.
So we're stacking our subsidies to meet the market need to get people housed. But with the region appeal, they're very generous with their allotment and their threshold, which meets what it's happening in the market. It's not below. So people actually can go out and find somewhere where you, myself, Christy, would like to live. And that's why that's the way that I look at units. If I'm not going to live there, why would I put someone else in there?
Right. I'm trying to think. So basically, they had what was it? I don't remember the name of the program. I get Children's Aid. Okay. In terms of housing, do you go to the general public? Some of your units, are they from people that sign up with that sort of model?
So our funding is similar to us. We have majority of region appeal funding, and then we have United Way of Greater Toronto supports our funding, and then we have our own fundraising. And so specifically Mississauga, the Mississauga Foundation provides Our Place Appeal a bit of funding. It does provide us a bit more flexibility as to doing that. We have not gone into the housing market as of yet. SHIP has, obviously, as you've heard. But what we're hoping to do is house people. In order to do that, we have to be able to have that house that will be able to support the youth and have that be able to wrap around supports. But we work with CAS on a lot of the youth that come into the organization have come out of care with CAS, and then we'll work collaboratively. The organization or the region works very well together because of the need and the lack of funding and a variety of different things. So we do Our Place Appeal doesn't have the housing that CAS or anyone has, but SHIP certainly does. Right?
We have some housing.
We have some
housing. You have some housing. So provincially, not so much. It's mainly a municipal thing in terms of funding. Provincially, not so much.
Provincially for us, yes.
For you, okay.
Not so much at
MCSS. It comes through the region appeal. So the provincial dollars will come through the region appeal, and the region appeal will then redirect it to community organizations and specifically our place appeal.
Okay. So, affordable. What do you deem affordable? Like, what's the difference between affordable and what's the other term you guys were using? Use another term. There was affordable
there's
deeply affordable. That's
affordable.
it. Yeah. Like, what do you see the differences? How do you see that being met?
Again, deeply affordable is anything under 30%. That can be sustained through an operational strategy.
Right.
Hard to do unless there is another pot of money that's funded through a government, federally, municipally, or provincially, that's going to sort of absorb those other costs. But for a nonprofit supportive housing provider, that deep affordability is not doable because we have to generate capital reserves and operational dollars to sustain the asset as it is.
Right. Okay.
And I think with the deeply affordable, it's not just housing. There's there's multiple vulnerabilities that these people have. If it's family violence, they've got mental health issues, addictions issues. So it comes
food scarcity.
Food scarcity. That's right. Yeah. So there's a lot of other complexities that come with. I think for most. Unfortunately, the shelter system, there's a lot in the adult system as well. There's a lot of chronic homelessness. There's a lot of need for support, and I think that's where the shelter system, in a way, is stuck because we cannot provide them with an out into supportive housing or deeply affordable housing.
There's no transition. It's basically you get them and you house them, and then when they come out, where do they go? Where are they going to go? How are they going to survive?
And they stay in the shelter system for a long time.
Because they can't go anywhere else. There's no bridge. That bridges the gap in steps, sort of thing. It's either you drown, or you come out and then you drown again, right? That's right. That's unfortunate.
And typically that's what shelters were. They were access to housing at one time.
Right.
So if you went to a shelter, there's a good chance back in the day you'd get housed. Right. But now the stock doesn't exist. The stigma that's associated with it and affordability.
Yeah, because when I grew up, we had Ontario Housing, right? Yeah. And I think that was I don't know a lot of the history. I know I grew up in it, but I don't know a lot of the history in terms of why it failed or why it was shut down. Do you see something like that possibly in the future that could actually assist with that gap?
Absolutely, because back in the late 80s, early 90s, the province downloaded their Ontario housing
Right.
to the municipalities or to subsidies. That actually they put it to the market to fix it.
Mhm.
And now we're dealing with the market as the way the market is now,
Right.
and this is where we're at.
Right.
So my big push, and in Finland, I don't know if you guys are familiar with their strategies in Finland.
I know they have reindeer. I don't know much about it, right? Yeah.
Best housing and homelessness strategy. They have 5 million people living in the country. They have over 1 million affordable housing units. No child under the age of 18 will ever be homeless. It's a mandate through the government. They instantly get housed. So looking at as a welfare state or a government body that actually would take it on, I would endorse the province to take it back on.
Right.
Start building mixed buildings. We have a building called Hanson.
Mhm.
It's in Brampton, 247 Queen Street. It's a
Right,
mixed
right,
model.
right.
It has community, people in market rent.
Mhm.
We have RGI, we have supportive units, and it's working well. It's integrated the community. So they can't have these towers of just folks that are marginalized, sort of in their own silo. You have to mix market them. It actually prevents a lot of bad things and actually encourages a lot of great things. So that model is some of our competitors, and we're doing research on it right now, is something that they want to replicate throughout the system because it works. It's a community.
Well, I think just thinking from my own experiences, right? I think you might. I mean, there's probably a lot of pushback when it comes to that mixed housing. You've got people that are. I mean, if they're buying a unit, for example, right? There's that stigma, and you know, a lot of times people are buying units not just for living; they're buying units as investments. And do you see any of that going on where, you know, people are, you know, like basically turning their backs or just not open to that suggestion? Because again, if you are buying a property to live, you're still looking at the investment side of it. And do you want to have people of lower incomes stuck in there with you? I guess the mentality would be, well, my property value is not going to increase. In fact, it's going to decrease. Do you get any of that stuff? Any kind of?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
I think a lot of it. I mean,
Okay.
it's on the back of the NIMBYism, not in my
Right.
backyard.
Right.
And I think that there's a lot more. I think there's a lot of, and Cory was mentioning this before, is it's a sense of community when people come together rather than keeping people separate, the vulnerable communities separate, and there's higher risks. And I think that if we are able to collaborate, it's a sense of community and people understand. So to answer your question, yes, there'll still be that, but I think it's really important for the community to understand and educate themselves.
But that's the thing, right?
We have a big home housing problem.
Right.
We need some answers on how to fix it, and why should someone that's 16, 17, 18-year-old be discriminated against and not be allowed to be involved in the community. So
yeah, and I agree, but I think there is that stigma associated to your point. But there is research that shows that folks that actually buy or purchase in a wealthy neighborhood, and they introduce something that's more affordable, the property goes down, property value around. However, if you introduce affordable housing into a community that's impoverished, actually community rises.
Right.
I honestly think, based on our model at Hanson, it's that collaboration, living together, but understanding the folks that you're living with, because they're everywhere. You know, everybody, 76% of our population suffering from mental illness.
Right, which is the majority of us.
Yes, you know, so I think it's in different degrees, but also I think the property and operations management of those properties goes a long way. For example, offering everything to the community, meaning everybody in it. I don't care if you own your condo there or you're renting there, your RGI, you're supportive, you get what we have. So if you want to come to wellness, if you want to see a counselor, if you need it, you can do all the stuff. It's open for the whole building. So I think being inclusive that way, we're going to get more buy-in. But to your point, there's people that still have that stigma as I'm not associating myself with that.
Yeah, and I think it's a really tough. Bridge to try and gap. It's people's mentalities. It's how they think. It's how they, you know, it's unfortunate, but maybe sometime in the future with more education and more involvement, because I don't think enough people are involved. They say they care about it, but they're not hands-on. You know, they're just, oh yeah, we have a housing problem. Okay, and the thing is that it can affect anybody. It doesn't have to be, and I mean, it can affect you. Maybe it's not affecting you now, but it could affect you later on in life as your income decreases. Right? You may find yourself in that sort of situation where the income that you were once used to and your style or your way of living has changed because the dollars aren't coming in the same way that they used to. So those are really good points. Thanks again for joining. I'm Trevor Isaac again from MIRANET, and we have Christy Upshall and Cory O'Handley, and we're just discussing housing and how it affects the majority of people within the city of Mississauga. If you want to watch this or you want to hear it, visit us at MIRANET Talks on YouTube. So we just want to get right back into it, and we were talking about what you guys do as organizations. Like, what sort of people are we seeing? Like who is it affecting the most? And like, give me a profile of what these people are.
First, with the youth perspective,
the profile. There's a lot of different profiles, but I was trying to think about. We're an organization that serves 16 to 24, so a lot of our youth may be coming out of care or been kicked out for a variety of different reasons. I often say it's to no fault of their own that they are now homeless.
Right.
And so we had a young person that had a family breakdown. They couldn't stay in the house. They came to our place, Peel. Really, really motivated young person. But again, they're adolescents, right? So there's a whole other, a lot of other issues going on with that being an adolescent. So this young person worked with us at the Mississauga site for a bit. Got him into transitional housing. He was very eager to stay in school, and he wanted to. He did show some mental health issues while he was at the organization, which was great because then we could provide him with the resources that he needs to get help. And his journey was he stayed at the organization for probably about a month or so, and then moved on to independent housing. Worked with their outreach team. Provided that wraparound support that we've talked about, was able to go back to school, and enough time has passed where we were able to work with the family, and he hasn't moved back home, but there is a connection with that family, and that conversation is beginning. So it's really a successful story. We find a lot of success in our young people coming to us, and there's also a lot of heartache as well. I mean, we have probably looking at out of our youth, high percentages have addictions and mental health issues, and some of the mental health issues we don't see it when they come in, but then as their journey is at the organization, it starts showing. And unfortunately, and we're trying to work on this, but I think in Cory and I have had some conversations about it. Mental health services are huge waiting lists. Our staff can support, but we're not mental health experts, psychiatrists, therapists. So there is a lot of young people that need assessments. They might need medication, and they don't have access to that.
So it's not just, it's a combination of different things. It's not just the housing aspect.
Right.
It's all the related issues that go along with it.
That's right, yeah.
And
so and as Cory mentioned before, like just a lot of complexity with the young person or people that are homeless in general, but for us, it's a lot of complexities with this young person. You're not adolescents, you're homeless. Majority of our youth aren't able to go back home. They broke that, they either have been raised through Children's Aid and they don't have a home to go back to. Some of them are newcomers into the community and are trying to navigate the system. And and then you've got the adolescents to top that off. So it's a whole a lot of stuff that they're going through. And as I mentioned before, we're just seeing a lot more addictions and mental health issues, and I think the addictions issues is trying to deal with the mental health.
It's trying to cover up issues that may have been pre-existing and so on. So do you have numbers or a breakdown in terms of, you mentioned newcomers, right? Is there do you see a huge gap in that, like in terms of who you're housing?
So the region has put together they've tried to separate the homeless system for the region of Peel, or not the region, the homeless people in the region of Peel versus the newcomers. So they've been really successful in getting a reception center and putting people in hotels and seeing a lot of success there. Our place Peel did, a few years ago, we worked with the unaccompanied minors coming from Ukraine. So they came into Peel, and we were supporting them in a hotel. And very different, you know, these youth were displaced for sure, but they had a different ability to get themselves housed. There's a huge Ukrainian population within Mississauga, so there was a community of support around them. Right. Whereas some of the homeless youth in the region don't have that community supports. Anyway, but then the asylum seekers, so they have separated it, very successful, as I mentioned. A lot of people are coming to Peel first. They're coming into the country, and they're coming to Peel because of the resources and because of the support that they receive.
And they have, some will have communities existing already.
Absolutely, yeah.
So familiarity, I guess. Yeah. Huh.
So, over to you.
Over to me.
Over to you.
Just on that reception center, it's actually 680 beds. It's the largest in the country, actually, for its need, which I think is great because we've seen a reduction in the shelter system. I got numbers today that we're at capacity 108. Those numbers were 300-400% not long ago before this reception center opened up. So it's working.
So it's helping take some of the load off.
Absolutely. In terms of the folks that we see out of the 2,500 strong on our wait list, mostly adults, and again, our mandate's mental health and addictions, folks that have a diagnosis. I was mentioning that they're getting a little bit more complex in the sense because there's other comorbidities or other social determinants of health that are not being met. Food insecurity, family breakdown, cyclical homelessness, where that's their parents were homeless and now that's what they do because that's have they been sort of trained. So I'm finding it's more complex now for the folks. Our ages are usually mostly male, not most, well, the average is more male. Right. And then probably in their 40s. In their 40s.
Yeah. Okay, all right. So, like you mentioned, a waiting list. Typically, what's the duration for someone, once they get on the waiting list in terms of when they actually have somewhere to go?
So we currently operate from a chronological list, which we are changing to prioritization. So which in my opinion works the best because they're the most in need, the most they're using the system. Right. But typically right now we're looking at maybe 3 to 5 years for someone to get housed. Yeah, which, if you compare that to the social wait list for the greater regional piece, you're looking, they're probably around 12 to 15 years.
Wow, and a lot can happen in those 5 years.
Yeah, I think there's over 20,000 people on the Region Appeals wait list. And ours is very specific around, but the Region Appeal is doing something progressive around coordinated access and looking at the prioritization piece, really getting the most in need, the highest service users that need the most support, get them housed first. So,
well, you guys are part of an umbrella organization called Metamorphosis. How do you guys all fit into that structure?
So, Metamorphosis came about when the region was dissolving, and one of the nonprofit community came together and said, this is going to impact our community service organizations and nonprofits if that happens. Fast forward, it didn't happen, and we kept the momentum going about talking about the lack of funding in the region of Peel specifically. So there's about 100 nonprofit members, and then there's a leadership table. I'm on the leadership table representing the housing portfolio. And long story short, there's been research done about the fact that we are $868 million short annually in the region of Peel. Right. And it's been research for different municipalities, and probably every municipality would say that they're underfunded, but we have that extra underfunding, and it's been going on for years. Right. And it's just compounding the issues, and so we're really trying to advocate if it's housing, if it's food insecurity, whatever it is, that we need more money in the region of Peel. We're diverse, we're unique, and we need to be able to the community, the nonprofit organizations have to come together and decide what the solution is for the region of Peel and work with all levels of government, but specifically the mandate is the provincial government to advocate back to say, we need more funding. So it's been a great experience for sure. I think a lot of advocacy, and making sure the region of Peel, City of Mississauga, we go to delegate to council regularly. We're trying to ensure that the message doesn't get lost, and that that we're continuing to grow.
Mhm.
Like the region appeal grows all the time, and
Yeah.
it's becoming, a lot of the nonprofits there's a lot of burnout. There's a lot of crisis.
Yeah, I mean, it's an emotional type of,
Yeah.
I guess, function that
Yeah.
you guys do.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And especially coming in contact, like you are coming in contact with youth, right?
Mhm.
And that's probably really
Mhm.
depressing in terms of,
Mhm.
you know, it just doesn't sound like and with you don't have the funding,
Yeah.
and you just keep getting pushed back and
Mhm.
back and back, and the
Mhm.
gap grows more and more and more.
That's right.
Do you see anything in the works or anything that you can think of coming down the road that
Mhm.
might assist in that?
Yeah, I think in terms of building affordable housing,
Mhm.
oh yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. The city of Mississauga looking at dedicating,
Mhm.
$41 million around looking at incentives around affordable housing.
Yeah, I kind of know about those incentives,
Yeah.
and that's with the fourplexes
Yeah.
and so on. Now, I think that came in July of 2024, and I don't have any numbers, and I haven't seen any numbers, but I'm wondering if that is actually doing anything in terms of helping with this crisis.
I think they have 12 people on deck, 12
Okay.
companies or 12 nonprofits
Okay.
that are ready to do something. That's my
Mhm, mhm,
understanding.
mhm.
In the region appeal itself, doing the $71 million call for creating affordable housing,
Mhm.
which should happen sooner than later, that could be stood up in the next 2 years, which is
Mhm.
good in terms of development.
Right.
So I think there's things that are happening is enough now,
Right.
but there's lots that we need to do
Mhm.
more of.
Mhm.
More.
Yeah, we're just not sure where it's going because I mean, like, you know, the buzzwords or the buzz phrases have been, we need more housing, we need more housing. But honestly, we don't, like we at MIRANET, we don't hear it a lot. We don't hear, we need more affordable housing. We just keep hearing, we need to build more homes.
Mhm.
And it's not just we need to build more homes. I think that part that's secondary. We need to build more affordable housing.
Right.
Because if you don't have that, I mean, you can build homes,
Mhm.
and a lot of the homes that I see going up, you know, they're not affordable.
No.
They're just absolutely not affordable. And I don't know how we solve that issue,
Mhm.
right? And I think it's a mentality.
Mhm.
It's not just from council; it's also
Mhm.
from the general public, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Because these houses, these structures that are going up, they're not, or these new developments, they're not affordable.
No.
And again, it comes back to, I guess, whose definition of affordable are we actually looking at?
Mhm.
You know, because you mentioned 76%, right?
Mhm.
People don't really fall into that
Mhm.
affordable bracket.
Yeah.
So it's a tough one. It's a tough
Mhm.
one.
It definitely is. I think political will, and then need to change, DC charges, zoning amendments, expedite that.
Mhm.
It is, as you can assume, it takes a long time to get permits, zoning, change of
Yeah.
variances, change of
Yeah.
use. That needs to be for if we're going to do this strategically and we're going to do this effectively.
Mhm.
I think we need a lot of political will.
Mhm.
We need the freedom to do it within parameters.
Mhm. Yeah, within parameters, because it's still got to be. You can't just open up the floodgates,
Right.
right? It has to be monitored, and it's got to be smart. It's got to
Yeah.
be smart planning, right?
Absolutely. And then the dedicated, the units looking at vacant land, looking at buildings that aren't
Mhm.
being utilized.
Right.
Post-COVID, we know that a lot of folks are still working from home and they will be for the foreseeable
Mhm.
future.
Mhm.
How do we utilize that space?
Yeah.
So I think there's lots of stuff that people are doing, but I don't think it's collaborative,
Mhm. Mhm.
which that's the issue.
Mhm.
So I think more dedication, more political will, and really looking at those issues that become barriers, even around, and Christy knows this, even around environmental studies. We had an opportunity in South Mississauga,
Mhm.
which is property. The ground was saturated with the wrong stuff.
Yeah.
So, and that's very,
Just
very,
curious,
very costly.
whereabouts was that?
It was on Lakeshore.
Lakeshore.
and here in Ontario, just
Okay,
south,
okay.
or west, I should say.
Because I think that's a
Great
big
property, but and the cost around soil sampling and drilling
Mhm.
is just unbelievable. So nonprofits that don't have the resources to do that,
Mhm.
to develop these things, doesn't exist.
I guess that's where you'd have to get assistance from the province.
Right.
To do
That should be an all-encompassing blanket.
Right.
Whatever costs involved in doing this,
Right.
we will provide
Right.
that free and support.
Right. Just to get you going.
Just to get it up and
Yeah,
going.
because site assessment is, they have to check the site for contaminants.
Yeah.
If none are there, a lot of times they are,
Mhm.
but if none are there, then okay, that's great. But if
Mhm.
they are, you do the site assessment, then you have to do, then you got to do a reassessment,
Mhm.
and you have to come back in and you have to say, okay, this is the material that we found, this is how we get it out,
Right.
and it's a very long process.
Yeah.
And as you said, it's very expensive. So the province, if the province could pick that up, I think it would definitely help a lot, because we have a lot of that in southwest Mississauga, along the lakeshore, because a lot of it was industrial. Right? And as you know, here in Ontario, the new developments that are at Lakeshore and here in Ontario, that's something that, but I guess the developers at that point would have done that. That would have been part of their job, but you guys don't have that. You guys don't have that cash flow.
Right. The remediation of it is extremely expensive.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks again for joining us on MIRANET Talks. Cory, Christy, challenges and solutions. Where do you see that?
I think there's a lot of opportunity with the region of Peel, for sure. I think that one of the where the areas that is focused on is shelter use, and the amount of money that's going into shelters and supporting these people and our youth, or even adult shelters and family shelters that SHIP run. It's a lot of money, and if we could redirect some of that to housing, then that's a solution. I think that is where all levels of government, within the region of Peel as well, need to come together and work with the nonprofits to be able to change the system. That there's a lot of big developers out there who are looking at the nonprofit organizations such as SHIP to be able to take on the housing market and be able to support more folks. I think a lot of the nonprofit organizations that we work with, they'd like to get into the housing. They'd like to be able to support their clients, and they can't. They just don't have the capital in their organization. They don't have the risk that they'll take. I think it's a lot of money, as we mentioned before. But I think the nonprofit sector has to be involved in making those solutions from the ground up, and I think that's where it's really important. And I know that Cory's got some other areas.
I totally agree. Reallocating of funds, not just for Band-Aids, makes sense to me. Housing solves homelessness. Where do the people go after the shelter or transition? So part of what we do at SHIP around our development strategies is that we're creating community bonds with the community. So basically what that is different tiers of where people can invest and get a healthy return on their money, who are socially minded, know that their money is being invested somewhere good. And so right now we have a series of three different tiers. So you can do 1,000 to 5,000, 5,000 to 10, 25 and up. And each different tier will actually provide more return to you guaranteed.
Right.
So for example, the first tier would be 3.5%, then 4.5%, then 5 to 6%, which is better than some of what's happening.
GICs right now, 4%.
And so again, this is guaranteed for them, despite anything. So again, we're really looking at getting that off the ground right now, and we're getting a lot of interest from a lot of folks saying this is a good way. So that's something we want to support and share with other nonprofits that want to get into it, where have a lot of difficulty getting funds, seed funding, and etc. So it's working for us.
That's actually a really good incentive. Really. So between 3 and 5%. Like a 1-year term, that sort of thing?
They can go up to 1 to 6 years, depending on how you want to allocate. And then whatever your return is, you can reinvest it again.
You can reinvest it again. And again, this is my background, so I'm just wondering, in terms, because this is something, sharing information like this, I wasn't aware of that. And I think that's something that could really, if you had the push behind it, I think that's something that people would be interested in. The people that are NIMBYs, right? Or NIMBYs, right? Because again, investment. You're talking to their sensibilities, right? It's really sounds like a really good, interesting thing. 1 to 6 years. How are people paid? Just curious. Is it on a monthly basis? Is it at the end of the year?
Monthly.
It's monthly.
Yeah.
So it could help people in terms of supplementing income.
Yeah.
That's a really good idea. Huh. And you say it's guaranteed. Something like that is guaranteed.
Yeah.
How so?
I should say the risk that would be is if our organization lost all of our funding.
Okay. Okay.
That's the way.
I got it. Okay. There's always risk.
There's always risk. That would be the risk, but I think that's
Right.
Little
risk.
So as organizations, right? Whether Metamorphosis, MIRANET, we're hoping to build more positive relationships where we can all feed off of each other. We can help promote each other and bring awareness to residents within the city. How do you see that working? Is that something that you guys, obviously you would be something, like it would be something that you would be for, obviously. But do you have any ideas in terms of how to get that going? Like we've started up this channel, and we're hoping that by doing that and highlighting different groups and different nonprofits within the city, that's going to help generate more interest and more involvement. Do you see any other avenue that we could go into that would help, trigger that?
I think just providing different avenues for organizations to come together if there's events or anything like that. I think one of the things with the Metamorphosis group is to get, we have a lot of the nonprofit support, but we need to get in front of businesses, we need to get in front of taxpayers, we need to get in front of people that need to hear the message around affordable housing and the housing crisis that we have. And I think providing that opportunity, if there's events or if there's, obviously like this with podcasts or social media, of how we can work together a bit differently from a business standpoint and nonprofit sector.
Right.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Christy and I are a couple of the founding members of the Peel Alliance and Homelessness. So how do we get more community at that table to be part of that table? How do we get people to come in and we can provide education or knowledge exchange from both groups? I think really getting that collaboration, getting people on board to that. And also both Christy and I sit on the community advisory board too. So how do we get exposure about what's happening? And that's in partnership with the feds and the municipal government. So I think there's good opportunities to actually showcase those. And we also established the Ontario Alliance and Homelessness as well. That's more of a global thing. But I think, again, there's more avenues for people to be sort of brought into and educate on both sides, because we work in silos and people don't know that.
And it's tough, right? Because like one of our things as well is the fact that the lack of coverage, the lack of I guess media. We don't have that in Mississauga, and I think that's really a huge roadblock, right? People don't really hear about things. They don't know about things, and the other cities or publications that would cover it, they don't cover it to the same sort of in-depth analysis that's needed, because it's not their city, sort of thing, right?
That's right.
So I mean, that's a tough hurdle. When Rogers Cable 10 kind of killed everything, really. I mean, it wasn't a great TV station, but it was informative, and you could watch it, and you could get a lot of information about what's going on within your city. And now we're down to, I guess, the Mississauga News and I guess the Pointer, maybe. And they're not big. It's not like the Star. It's not like the Toronto Sun. It's not something that people say, "Oh, I can't wait to get my edition." So I mean, it's a huge roadblock. But I think partnering and doing stuff like this, I think that hopefully will help just bring more awareness throughout the city. Because I mean, a lot of people don't know who MIRANET is. I'm sure they don't know who you guys are, which is unfortunate. But I guess it's something that we can kind of push together to kind of just put the light on and say, hey, we're over here, and this is how you can help.
Absolutely.
So do you see any like with all the stuff that's going on, and we're talking about tariffs and all that sort of stuff, how do you see that affecting your funding going forward?
Yeah, I think...
I know it's going to be negative, but...
I think it's the unknown, right? It's, for us, I think we are already underfunded. The system's already in crisis mode. I mean, we're coming out of COVID. We're still coming out of COVID. Yeah. We're not, we're working with the asylum seeker. It's a lot that the Region of Peel has is taking on right now. So adding another layer, I think, is panicking, for lack of a better word, for a lot of the nonprofits, because funding is already being decreased. Things are already happening before the tariff talk. So I think that there is, and then I do think there's probably an avenue to discuss that with some business developers that talk about what will the impact be, because I would imagine at some point funding will be cut. Funding will be cut
or decreased.
And people don't, a lot of people, a lot of organizations fundraise. And if they don't have that, people aren't we're seeing a decrease in fundraising just because after COVID and housing issues and income issues is what we're seeing is that's going to even be exacerbated by tariffs. People just can't afford it.
Yeah. Well, the fear of the unknown, I think that you hit it on there. Job insecurity and all that sort of stuff. And it's hard to raise money if people aren't comfortable with maybe them having a job the next day.
Yeah, I agree with Christy. I think it's going to impact, but I'm not that pessimistic. And the reason I'm not that, because I don't know how worse it can get.
Right.
You know,
Right.
in terms of service delivery that we provide.
Okay.
So for our funders to start reducing those funds, I think where the strain's going to be on is our workforce and the resources and the clients that we serve around affordability, around themselves. You know, we hear stories now of staff that are saying, I can't make ends meet. You know, they're supporting people that are struggling as well, right? So they can really empathize with that.
It's hard to give when you don't have it.
That's
or
right.
you don't know you're going to have it.
You
Exactly.
know, and if we do food security within an organization, so when they're delivering food baskets, there's probably some temptation that I could use this too.
Right,
You know,
right.
so I think struggle. In the development side, I'm a little concerned just around if it's steel or if there's other things that we get, what that's going to look like. So I think from a development piece, I'm more of a pessimistic perspective. But I think on the other side, I think we're going to be okay, but I think we're going to have some challenges because I can't see them reducing anything. There will be no more increases.
There would be nothing to it.
But
We're
I don't
already
think
underfunded.
Yeah.
We can't get underfunded.
Right. Can't get any worse, right? Once again, we're here with Christy Upshall, CEO of Our Place Peel, and Cory O'Handley, Director of SHIP. Okay? Thanks for joining us. And I think basically if anybody wants to get involved, they want to find out more about your organizations, how do they do that?
You can visit our website, www.ourplacepeel.org, and then on our website it will have all of the different social media channels that we have, X, Facebook, Instagram.
Okay, fantastic.
So if you're looking for services at SHIP, Services Housing in the Province, please go to the website www.shipshay.ca.
Okay, great. And you have other social media platforms?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we can put that in the video, okay? So people can reach out to you and find out how it all works, how they can get more involved, and how they can help, right? Because again, we talked about media, and we talked about the lack of media, and I think this is really the only platforms that we do have at the moment in which to spread our messages and to just make people more aware within the city of Mississauga. Okay, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been very informative, and I hopefully it opens up a lot of eyes, and hopefully it opens up a lot of eyes in terms of what's important in Mississauga, what makes it tick, and where people can help. Okay, thanks again for joining us at MIRANET Talks, and we'll see you on the next episode.